Imagine stepping back into the 1970s, when the smell of sizzling burgers and fries filled the air on nearly every corner in America. The streets were lined with restaurants, each one vying for your attention, offering something a little different. Some were beloved by families, others became iconic for their time. Fast food was just beginning to boom, and casual dining had a new appeal that made dining out a staple part of American culture. But as time marched on, some of these restaurants faded into obscurity, never to return. What happened to the great restaurants of the 70s, the ones we used to flock to? Well, let's take a dive into the history of the 20 worst restaurants from the 70s that no one wants to eat at anymore. What caused their rise, and, more importantly, what led to their downfall? Join us on this journey down memory lane as we explore the decline of some of the most memorable eateries from that era. Wags. Let's kick things off with Wags, an ambitious idea that was supposed to shake up the restaurant scene, but ultimately couldn't keep up with the competition. It's frustrating when a place you loved so much takes such a sharp dive. What was once known as a quick service option with a step up from your typical fast food joint turned into a fading memory for many. Why? Well, let's start from the beginning. Wags was founded in the 70s by Walgreens, a time when drugstores were looking to find new ways to get customers through their doors. It seemed simple enough: sell a variety of fast food and casual meals in a comfortable, family-friendly setting. But this wasn't just your average quick-service restaurant. When Wags first opened, it was considered a major improvement over the fast food chains of the time. The sandwiches were the talk of the town, and they even offered breakfast all day. A rare treat that many people loved. The famous roast beef sandwich, it became a legend in itself, giving Wags a unique appeal that stood out from the rest. This wasn't just about burgers and fries, it was the kind of place where you could enjoy a diner-style burger with a side of crispy fries and wash it all down with a milkshake. And that's not all. Late-night cravings were catered to here, from pancakes to a hearty club sandwich, ready for you at any hour of the day or night. In an era when most fast food joints closed their doors by 10 p.m., Wags was a savior for late-night food lovers. But, as they say, success can sometimes breed complacency. By the 80s, Wags found itself in a crowded market. Casual dining chains like Denny's and IHOP were offering similar menu options and attracting the same audience. At the same time, fast food giants like McDonald's were making their moves and raising the standards for what was expected from quick-service food. Wags, unfortunately, could not keep pace. Its initial charm, the appeal of offering breakfast all day, and a casual diner experience began to fade as competition intensified. It struggled to maintain its relevance, and by 1991, Walgreens made the difficult decision to sell off most of the Wags locations. Despite its early successes, Wags had become a casualty of the evolving restaurant market, and by the time it folded, it was no longer the go-to place for hungry customers looking for a late-night meal or a classic diner experience. Burger Queen. Now, let's talk about a name that may ring a bell for some, but might leave others scratching their heads. Burger Queen. To the uninitiated, it might seem like a second-rate knockoff of Burger King, but Burger Queen was more than just that. Back in its prime, it was a fast food chain that stood out on its own merits, offering burgers, fish sandwiches, fried chicken, and some of the most unforgettable desserts of the time. Let's take a closer look at how it went from royalty to ruin. Burger Queen began in 1956 in Louisville, Kentucky, and by the 70s, it was making waves across the southern U.S. The chain quickly earned a reputation for serving up more than just your basic burger. Unlike many of its competitors, Burger Queen offered a variety of menu items, including fried chicken and fish sandwiches. But the real star of the show was their royal treat desserts. These weren't your average fast food desserts. They were a cut above. From soft-serve ice cream dipped in chocolate to rich, creamy milkshakes, customers flocked to Burger Queen for their sweet fix after a meal. The signature Wha Burger, a direct competitor to the Whopper, was another bold offering from Burger Queen. The idea was to challenge the king himself, and for a time, it worked. Burger Queen's loyal fans adored the food and the unique touch it brought to the fast food scene. However, as we all know, the food world can be a fickle place. By the early 80s, Burger Queen was struggling to maintain its popularity. In 1981, the chain underwent a major rebranding, changing its name to DRS. This decision marked the beginning of the decline. The quality of the food suffered, and what was once a beloved local chain started to fade into obscurity. By the late 80s, most DRS locations were either sold off or converted into Dairy Queens, cementing Burger Queen's fall from grace. The queen had been dethroned, and the once proud empire had crumbled. Sambo's. Let's now move on to another restaurant that holds a place in history, though not always for the best reasons. Sambo's, what was once a cozy, family-friendly diner with a focus on breakfast all day, became a cultural flashpoint in the 70s. Known for its towering stacks of pancakes, bottomless coffee refills, and classic diner food, Sambo's quickly gained popularity. It seemed like the perfect spot for families to gather on weekends and enjoy a hearty meal. But the restaurant's downfall was tied to its name, which became increasingly controversial as the years went on. Sambo's began in 1957 in Santa Barbara, California, and by the 70s it had expanded into a powerhouse chain. The name itself, derived from the combination of Sambone and Nubone, was innocently meant to be a catchy and playful name. But over time, the racial implications of the term became impossible to ignore. By the late 70s, the name Sambo's was seen as offensive, referencing a derogatory character from a controversial children's book. As the nation became more aware of the cultural sensitivities surrounding the name, protests began to emerge. Despite attempts to change the name at some locations, the damage had been done. By 1982, the chain filed for bankruptcy, and most of its locations were closed or sold off. Sambo's, once a go-to diner for pancakes and comfort food, faded into the annals of history, its legacy forever tarnished by the racial controversy tied to its name. Big Scott's. Next on our list is a restaurant that might have been Scotland's answer to McDonald's, Big Scott's. This chain started in 1956 and tried to capture the essence of fast food with a Scottish twist. It was founded by a group of Illinois-based McDonald's franchisees who wanted more control over their operations. The restaurant's mascot was a jovial, kilt-wearing Scottish lad, and its overall theme gave it a playful, friendly identity that customers could connect with. Big Scott's gained traction, particularly in the 70s, with over 200 locations in the Midwest. It offered a menu that was quite similar to McDonald's, but it had its own unique flavor with an emphasis on budget-friendly items. The 15-cent burger became a popular go-to, and the fries, well, they were legendary. Many people fondly remember the rich, creamy milkshakes and the colorful tartan decor that gave Big Scott's a charming ambiance. But despite its initial success, Big Scott's couldn't keep up with a fast food revolution that was happening in the 70s. The competition was fierce, and by 1973, the company merged with Hardee's in an attempt to survive. Unfortunately, the merger couldn't prevent Big Scott's eventual demise. The brand was gradually phased out, and by the late 70s, most of the locations had been converted into Hardee's outlets. It's a sad story, because at its peak, Big Scott's had some of the best fast food around. But, like so many other chains, it was simply outpaced by the bigger giants in the industry. Burger Chef. Now let's talk about one of the most innovative fast food chains of its time, Burger Chef. Founded in 1954, Burger Chef wasn't just another burger joint. It was a pioneer in the fast food industry. The chain quickly became one of the largest in the country, with over 1,000 locations by the 70s. Burger Chef introduced the concept of the combo meal, a game changer for the industry. It also launched the Build Your Own Burger Bar, giving customers the freedom to customize their meals. These innovations set Burger Chef apart from the competition and made it a favorite for families looking for a quick, customizable meal. But despite its early dominance, Burger Chef couldn't sustain its momentum. In fact, its rapid expansion and ambitious growth strategies became one of its biggest problems. The company struggled to keep up with increasing competition, particularly from McDonald's, which had started to dominate the fast food landscape. Burger Chef's decline was accelerated by some disastrous events. The company found itself embroiled in a lawsuit over its Fun Meal, which was designed to compete with McDonald's Happy Meal. The lawsuit resulted in a huge financial hit that Burger Chef never fully recovered from. But perhaps the most tragic event in the company's history was the kidnapping of two of its employees in 1978, which resulted in their deaths. In the aftermath, Burger Chef tried to cover up the incident, which angered the public and tarnished the brand's reputation. By 1982, the chain was sold to Hardee's, and over the next few years, all remaining Burger Chef locations were rebranded as Hardee's. Burger Chef's fall from grace was a devastating one, especially considering how it was once one of the most promising fast food chains in America. Beefsteak Charlie's. Beefsteak Charlie's was another restaurant that had a meteoric rise, only to crash and burn in the face of rising costs and poor quality control. Founded in the early 1900s, Beefsteak Charlie's reached its peak in the 70s, becoming a beloved spot for all-you-can-eat steak and seafood. With locations across the East Coast, Beefsteak Charlie's became a New York City icon, offering a unique dining experience. Endless steak, shrimp cocktails, a bountiful salad bar, and even unlimited wine and beer. For many, it was the ultimate indulgence, a place where you could eat as much as you wanted and feel like royalty. But like many all-you-can-eat restaurants, Beefsteak Charlie's eventually ran into trouble. By the 80s, the concept that once made it so popular, offering unlimited food, became a major liability. The overhead costs for providing all-you-can-eat meals were astronomical, and the quality of the food started to suffer. Customers who had once flocked to Beefsteak Charlie's for the endless shrimp and steak found themselves disappointed by declining food quality. It wasn't long before the restaurant's charm began to fade. In the 90s, Beefsteak Charlie's slowly began to shut down locations. The high costs and poor quality made it unsustainable, and by the end of the decade, the chain was gone. Its once beloved salad bars and all-you-can-eat steak dinners became a distant memory. While it's easy to look back and remember Beefsteak Charlie's as a fun place to dine, the reality is that the chain couldn't adapt to the changing dining landscape and eventually lost its place in the market. Wimpy's is another classic example of a fast food chain that had its heyday, but eventually faded away. Established in the 1930s in Chicago, Wimpy's rose to prominence in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, becoming one of the most popular burger joints in the US and UK. The restaurant was named after the character Wimpy from the Popeye cartoons, and its mascot, a cheerful, plump man, became synonymous with fast, satisfying meals. The chain's burger offerings, especially the Quarter Pounder, became famous for their size and taste. What made Wimpy's stand out was its attempt to elevate the fast food experience. Unlike most fast food chains that served burgers in paper wrappers, Wimpy's served its burgers on actual plates, with utensils, giving it a more grown-up feel. This was a unique approach for a fast food joint, and it attracted a loyal following. The burger was always paired with crispy fries and a thick milkshake, and for many, it became a favorite spot for a casual meal. But despite its success, Wimpy's couldn't keep up with the competition. By the late 70s, the fast food market had become more competitive, and Wimpy's was unable to adapt to the changing tastes and expectations of customers. Many of its locations began to close, and by the 80s, the chain had almost entirely disappeared from the US. While Wimpy's managed to hold on a little longer in the UK, its US locations became a thing of the past. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Wimpy's anywhere, and it remains a reminder of how quickly even the most popular fast food chains can fall from grace. Lum's had a unique charm that set it apart from other fast food joints. Founded in the early 1950s as a hot dog stand in Miami Beach, Lum's quickly grew into a national chain by the 70s. What made Lum's different from the rest was its bold concept of pairing hot dogs and beer, two staples that you wouldn't expect to see together in a typical fast food setting. The menu was a bit of a mixed bag, offering everything from burgers to hot dogs. But the real standout was the famous steamed beer-battered buns that made every bite feel like a gourmet experience. Despite its innovative approach, Lum's couldn't keep up with a changing fast food landscape. The atmosphere they tried to create, a local pub feel with dark wood paneling and a bar in the corner, didn't resonate with the broader public as much as they'd hoped. While the idea of having a beer with your meal was novel, it ultimately didn't translate into lasting success. The family-friendly aspect of the chain was lost on customers who were more accustomed to the typical fast food experience. As Lum's struggled to appeal to both the adult and family crowds, it began to lose its footing. By the early 80s, Lum's was in decline. The restaurant chain couldn't maintain the level of quality and customer loyalty needed to survive in an increasingly competitive market. Despite having one of the most creative fast food concepts of its time, Lum's couldn't keep pace with newer, more efficient chains. The brand eventually faded into obscurity, and by the mid-80s, most of its locations had closed down. The once popular chain, known for its steamed buns and beer, is now a nostalgic memory for those who remember it fondly. The Brown Derby. The Brown Derby was more than just a restaurant. It was an institution, particularly in Hollywood. Established in I-29, the original Brown Derby on Wilshire Boulevard quickly became the go-to spot for movie stars, producers, and anyone who wanted to rub elbows with Hollywood's elite. With its unique decor, a building shaped like a derby hat, the Brown Derby became one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. By the time the 70s rolled around, it had expanded to multiple locations, including one at Walt Disney World, becoming a symbol of the glamorous Hollywood lifestyle. But despite its Hollywood allure and celebrity clientele, the Brown Derby's magic began to fade in the 70s. The menu was fancy, featuring prime rib, fried chicken, and the iconic Cobb salad, which was created by the restaurant's owner, Bob Cobb. The food was great, but the restaurant's atmosphere, the one that had once attracted the biggest names in film, began to feel outdated as tastes and dining trends shifted. The restaurant's appeal started to dwindle, and by the early 80s, the Brown Derby began to lose its place in the competitive dining market. Despite its history and once glamorous status, the Brown Derby couldn't keep up with the changing dining scene. The rise of newer, trendier restaurants and the decline of old-fashioned, formal dining led to its downfall. By the late 80s, most of its locations had closed, and the original restaurant was sold off. The Brown Derby, once a shining star in Hollywood's culinary scene, faded into obscurity. Today, the name lives on only in memories and in a few scattered mentions, but it serves as a reminder of how even the most iconic restaurants can fall victim to changing times. Chi-Chi's was once the go-to place for Tex-Mex cuisine, a vibrant, festive restaurant that took the U.S. by storm. Founded in Minneapolis in 1975, Chi-Chi's quickly became a beloved destination for families craving hearty Mexican food with a fun, festive atmosphere. With over 200 locations by the late 70s, Chi-Chi's was serving up all the classics: crispy nachos, chimichangas, and margaritas, all in a lively environment that made you feel like you were on vacation. The appeal of Chi-Chi's wasn't just in its food, it was the experience. The bright decor, the lively music, and the oversized portions all contributed to an atmosphere that felt like a celebration every time you walked through the door. But despite its popularity, Chi-Chi's couldn't maintain its success in the face of rising competition. By the late 80s, Tex-Mex cuisine had become more mainstream and new, innovative chains were entering the market. Chi-Chi's unfortunately didn't adapt as quickly as it should have. In 2003, disaster struck when a hepatitis A outbreak was traced back to contaminated green onions at a Chi-Chi's in Pittsburgh. The incident led to a massive decline in customer trust and ultimately played a major role in the restaurant's downfall. In the years that followed, many of Chi-Chi's locations were closed and the brand was sold off. Today, Chi-Chi's is virtually non-existent, with only a few remnants of its former glory in the form of food products found in grocery stores. It's a tragic end to a restaurant that once embodied the best of Tex-Mex dining. Victoria Station had a unique and ambitious concept, a steakhouse inside a train. Founded in the early 1970s, Victoria Station sought to offer diner an experience unlike any other. The restaurant chain capitalized on the novelty of dining in a train-themed setting, offering a menu focused on steaks, seafood, and classic American fare. Its popularity grew quickly, and by the mid-70s, Victoria Station had established itself as a go-to spot for those looking to enjoy a hearty meal in a fun-themed environment. However, the novelty of the train theme couldn't sustain Victoria Station in the long run. By the 80s, the chain was facing financial struggles as it couldn't keep up with changing dining trends. Customers who had once flocked to the restaurant for the unique atmosphere began to realize that the food wasn't as exceptional as the experience. The quality of the steaks and service started to slip, and the brand's overall concept began to feel outdated. As more and more competitors entered the casual dining scene, Victoria Station couldn't maintain its foothold. By the early 90s, most of the locations had closed, and the train-themed restaurant was no longer a viable business model. The once beloved chain, with its promise of gourmet steaks and an unforgettable dining experience, became just another relic of the past. It's a reminder that sometimes even the most unique ideas can't stand the test of time. Roy Rogers, named after the famous cowboy actor and singer, was a beloved fast food chain that made a big splash in the 70s. Founded in the late 1960s, Roy Rogers quickly gained popularity for its roast beef sandwiches, fried chicken, and the famous Fixin's Bar, where customers could load up their sandwiches with a variety of toppings. The restaurant's Wild West theme was a big hit, offering a fun and family-friendly atmosphere that made it stand out from the other fast food chains. At its peak, Roy Rogers had over 600 locations, making it one of the largest fast food chains in the US. But as with many chains from this era, Roy Rogers couldn't maintain its momentum. The rise of newer, more efficient fast food chains and increased competition from the likes of McDonald's and Burger King made it difficult for Roy Rogers to continue its success. While the food was solid, it wasn't enough to keep the restaurant chain afloat. In the end, Roy Rogers was sold off, and its locations were converted into Hardee's outlets. Today, there are only a few Roy Rogers locations left, and they remain a distant memory of the once popular fast food chain. The story of Roy Rogers is a sad one, showing that even a well-loved brand with a loyal following can struggle to stay relevant in an ever-changing market. Shoney's Big Boy holds a special place in the hearts of many who remember it as a casual, family-friendly restaurant with a unique charm. Founded in the late 1940s, Shoney's Big Boy became a popular spot for families looking to enjoy hearty meals in a relaxed setting. The restaurant's mascot, the cheerful Big Boy, became a symbol of comfort food and good times, and the double-decker Big Boy burger was one of the signature items that brought people in. At its peak, Shoney's had a welcoming, retro atmosphere with a diverse menu featuring everything from pancakes and burgers to omelets and hash browns. But by the 70s and 80s, the restaurant chain struggled to maintain its relevance. The fast food market was changing, and new competitors with better marketing and more innovative offerings began to capture the attention of the public. While Shoney's maintained its loyal following, it couldn't compete with the rapid expansion of chains like McDonald's, which were redefining fast food. The restaurant's food offerings, once considered innovative, became standard fare as consumer tastes shifted. By the 90s, Shoney's Big Boy began to fade. Many of its locations closed, and the brand struggled to adapt to changing dining trends. The introduction of new competitors, the decline in the quality of food, and the failure to innovate led to the eventual demise of the chain. Today, only a few Shoney's locations remain, and the once iconic Big Boy is a nostalgic memory for those who remember it fondly. Ponderosa Steakhouse. Ponderosa Steakhouse was another staple in the casual dining world, particularly in the Midwest and South. Established in the early 1960s, Ponderosa quickly became known for its all-you-can-eat steak and buffet options. The restaurant's Western-themed decor, which evoked the rugged charm of the American frontier, helped set the tone for a unique dining experience. Ponderosa was a place where families could enjoy sizzling steaks, baked potatoes, crispy fries, and all the salad bar fixings they could want, all for an affordable price. The restaurant's emphasis on quantity over quality made it a favorite for budget-conscious families. But, much like many other all-you-can-eat chains, Ponderosa's business model began to falter in the 80s and 90s. The rise of more specialized and higher-quality steakhouses made it difficult for Ponderosa to maintain its competitive edge. Customers began to seek out better dining experiences, and the once thriving buffet chain struggled to adapt. The declining quality of food and an oversaturation of similar restaurant concepts caused Ponderosa's downfall. By the late 90s, the chain was a shadow of its former self, and today, it has almost completely disappeared from the dining scene. Ponderosa's legacy remains a reminder of how even the most successful buffet-style chains can lose relevance when the industry shifts. Horn & Hardart. Horn & Hardart holds a special place in the history of American dining, as it was one of the first automated restaurant chains in the U.S. Founded in 1888 in Philadelphia. Horn & Hardart introduced the revolutionary concept of self-service, allowing customers to choose their meals from glass-enclosed food dispensers. The restaurant chain became a beloved institution, offering comfort foods like macaroni and cheese, meatloaf, and baked pies. By the 70s, Horn & Hardart had become a fixture in busy cities, with its bright, colorful food dispensers attracting a loyal customer base. However, by the turn of the century, Horn & Hardart was struggling. The rise of fast food chains and the decline of the automated restaurant model made it difficult for Horn & Hardart to maintain its position in the market. As customers became more accustomed to the convenience and speed of traditional fast food, the novelty of self-service faded. The company failed to adapt to the changing dining landscape, and by the late 70s, most of its locations had closed. Today, Horn & Hardart is a footnote in history, remembered more for its pioneering role in the fast food industry than for its food. The lasting legacy of 70s restaurants. As we reflect on the fall of these once popular restaurants, one thing becomes clear: the food industry is ever changing, and even the most iconic chains can't escape the tides of time. From Wags to Arthur Treacher's and beyond, each of these restaurants had their moment in the spotlight before falling into obscurity. Whether it was due to changing consumer tastes, increased competition, or poor management decisions, these once thriving establishments could not keep up with the evolving landscape of the restaurant world. But while these chains may be gone, their impact is still felt today. The innovations they brought to the table, from the combo meal at Burger Chef to the all-you-can-eat buffet at Ponderosa, shaped the dining experience for generations. Many of the concepts that these restaurants pioneered are still present in today's fast food and casual dining chains. While the names may have faded, their legacy lives on in the way we dine, and the lessons they left behind continue to shape the future of the restaurant industry. Conclusion: so, what can we learn from the rise and fall of these iconic restaurants? Their stories serve as a powerful reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even the brightest stars in the restaurant world. The food industry is constantly evolving, and the brands that succeed are the ones that can adapt and innovate with the times. As we look back on the glory days of these once beloved chains, we're reminded that nostalgia plays a significant role in how we remember the past, but it's the future that we must look toward. Do you remember any of these restaurants fondly? Or did you have a favorite spot that didn't make the list? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Stay tuned for more stories from the past, where we'll continue to explore the food and dining culture that shaped our world.